Hello and welcome to the bonus interview of Communities of Hope. I'm here with the author, Nigel Adams. Nigel, thank you for having this conversation with me.
Oh, it's so good to do it with you. Just really enjoy being here.
So you've completed the audiobook and everyone's been listening to it. Well, I hope so. Otherwise, they've jumped right to the very, very end. I'd just like to ask you a few questions. Just maybe we could dive a bit more behind the book itself. So I suppose the first question I would like to know a little bit more, because I know you talk about it in the book, but what's your heart behind this book?
There's two things really. One is, for me, the whole experience of developing, leading Hope Nottingham has just been such an amazing experience where God has been at work in so many ways. And at the most basic level, I just want to share and give glory to God because it's an amazing story. The other and really ongoing, really significant part, I think, of the book is that I think we discovered a way of showing compassion for our neighbours, our community, for meeting needs in such a way that through it, we've been able to build what I call a community of hope, a community where everybody gets to join in, whether the people that we're serving or those that are doing the serving, work together, love one another, and discover together that we all belong to the same family and that Jesus is in the middle of the whole thing and we can share him and get to know him together better. And it's just an amazing story of God's blessing and growing together as his community.
I love that. I love that answer. It's also something that sprung to mind to myself was that when you talk about serving, it'd be very easy to think of it as people are coming to you and then there is help given to them, but it's not. It's a two-way thing. And so my question to you, and I was really curious about this, and I've been saving it to have asked this question now rather than in the green room when we've been having our chats, and that is, what have you learned along the way?
Oh, so much really. I mean, it's hard in a way to put into words because one of the things I most love doing about being part of all that work, it might seem the simplest, most ridiculous thing, is sitting down and chatting with people that we're supporting and working with and listening to them and allowing them to share with me what their hopes are, what their fears are. And that's something that has really blessed me. It continues to be such an amazing environment to be part of. You share life with people that are sharing their life with you in such a way that we know that it's Jesus that is blessing us both. And experiencing that, it's kind of something you have to be part of to really get. It's something that's so special, really. And so learning that this is actually the kind of community that God wants us to be together, not one where I'm the boss and I'm saving everybody, but one that we're together, we are loving one another and really celebrating the fact that it is Jesus in the middle of it all, giving us hope and giving us life.
And would you say that conversation, meeting people on that human level is as important or even more important than giving over like some food or something like that? Is that something, because obviously when I think of community, that's what I'm thinking. Is there a lot of that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I always say it's not really about the food. I mean, the food's great. The food's what brings people together in the first place. But when you're sat there with people and they open your heart to them, they open their heart to me, I open my heart to them, and we become kind of vulnerable together. That is something that's just so special, really. And then when you kind of do that with each other, with groups of people that are sharing and learning together and learning to love one another, that kind of transcends the food. The food almost, I mean, I love food, but the food kind of gets a bit forgotten about because it's just about being together.
What did you say to me in the green room? I think it was yesterday. You said about that the food is the last. And I thought that was amazing. Would you mind saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine. People talk about the kind of work that we do about addressing food poverty. I detest the phrase food poverty because by the time people come to a food bank needing food, they've already been in a position where they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their gas bill or other things. And so they come to a point where they can no longer even feed themselves. And at that point, they come and ask for help. So there's no such thing as just food poverty. There's poverty in a whole wide range of things different kinds of material need, but not just that. Much more importantly, it's not just about those material needs, because people are often in that position because they also have poverty of relationships, poverty of identity, of self-worth. And so our response has to be not just feeding them, but actually helping them to rediscover relationships where they feel loved, where they can rediscover that they are people of great worth and of great value, and that they're people that we want to be part of our community. That gives them a new sense of identity. So there's much more that we need to do, and it's far more than just food.
Absolutely. So at what point did you think to yourself, okay, so because obviously we know your story, we've listened to the book. I'm going to write about this now. And how did that go about? Was it a long-winded situation? You're like, yeah, I took myself off to a view and spent weeks writing this thing. How did it come about? Why? When did you feel inspired to do it? And what was the process?
I think I'd been thinking about the idea of writing a story for quite some time. I was director of Hope Nottingham for about 12 years. And occasionally people would say to me, you need to write about this. And I do enjoy writing. So I thought, yeah, at some point I'll do that. And then when I stepped down as director in 2022, I then had 3 months off. And the first of those 3 months, first 6 weeks, I spent time literally just chilling out, resting, relaxing, going on holiday with my wife and that kind of thing. And then the next 6 weeks, I sat down to write the book. And I thought, to be honest, that I would just make a start on the book. I didn't actually expect that in that 6 weeks, I would write the whole book. But I did.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
You wrote a book in 6 weeks.
Yeah. But I'm
rolling my eyes because, there are going to be people listening to this going, what? Come on.
But I've always enjoyed writing. And it's something, for me, what happens is I start a sentence and then I just see where it takes me. And I kind of tend to do it and just see what comes out. So I prayed about it a lot. So I'm hoping what I've written is what God wants me to write. But it's just what came out, what flowed out of me, I suppose, really. So it felt like it was something that really flowed out quite easily. But it was also quite sort of cathartic as well, because it's been an amazing roller coaster of a journey, and some of it's been really quite difficult. But to actually write it down and remember again all the things that I have to be thankful for, it's a really blessing process.
Yes, absolutely. I found the second half of the book particularly, the whole book was great, but the second half of the book really sort of captured me. But you said that bit was a little bit more tricky to write than the rest?
Well, the first part of the book is my story and the story of Hope Nottingham, so I kind of knew what to write. I mean, it is what it is.
But then again, that can be quite difficult when you've had so many years experience and so many different stories on choosing the right ones.
I kind of just went with my instinct. I honestly didn't think about it too much. I just kind of went with what came to mind, really. And I'm quite glad that I remembered as much of it as I did. And I'm reading it back and I can probably think of other stories I didn't include. But I think I'm reasonably happy with the story that I put in there. But the story being the story was going to be what it was largely. The third part of the book particularly is the bit of sort of my reflection on the lessons that I've learned and sharing that. And I came to that point knowing that I think that would be a useful thing to do. I talk about this a lot with people and say, what I love doing now is giving other people the opportunity to learn from my mistakes. I've made plenty of them, really. And that, in a way, is what that last part of the book is about. And again, I tried to think, what are the things that I have most learned from? And if the kind of undercurrent to that really is, reading between the lines, you can try and figure it out for yourself if you like. Many of those things are things where things have gone really badly wrong.
Yes.
And I've therefore had to learn to try and make sure those things don't happen again. So what I'm giving you is my lessons from things that have gone really badly wrong. And that's what that part of the book is about. And I don't really know whether some of it will be new to people or not. Some of it might be. But I guess it's just my honest reflection of how things have gone, really, and what I've discovered along the way.
Now, you do say that you love to write,
Yeah,
and you do write, you do have a website where
I do.
you're
Yeah,
writing prayers
yeah.
and bits and pieces like that. So, tell us a bit more about that, and where would people find that?
So that's nigelahope.wordpress.com. And that came about quite a few years ago. I started to write a more or less daily prayer blog. One of the things that we do at Hope House and in some of our other community hubs now as well, we start every day with prayer. And at one time, that was just a spontaneous thing. But for some reason, over a period of time, we started to introduce a slightly more planned, slightly more structured way of doing it, partly to make it easier for other people to lead it as well. So I just started to write, and I did it on a daily basis. The way I would do it is I would write a little prayer blog of a morning whilst I was having my breakfast, and then we'd use it that day. Not a lot of advanced planning. I would just write the first thing that came into my head, and then we'd use it that day. And then particularly during the pandemic, I had a discipline of doing it every day for a year, which was quite a challenge, and particularly with lots of other things going on. But it was quite a profound thing to do, to be honest, really, just to take out a few minutes for myself and then for the community. And I do it in quite a simple way. I tend to use a particular small set of Bible readings that act as a bit of an introduction. And then we'll, if there's within the community setting, we might have a bit of worship time with a YouTube video. And then I'll just use a simple Bible reading. And I tend to go for short. I just really recognize that in that kind of community, people are not going to listen to the whole chapter of Ecclesiastes or something like that, you know. And so 2 or 3 verses that are going to speak to that community. And then I'll just share 1 or 2 thoughts about those verses, and literally, you know, a couple of sentences, real sort of soundbite stuff. Because what we found is that when we do that together, when we sit down together and just give that little bit of time to God, it kind of sets the scene for the whole day. It sets the scene for everybody that's coming in. This is what we're about. We put our trust in Jesus, and we love spending time with him. And that's what the kind of heart behind that, really. And I kind of think it's one of the most useful things that we can do is, before all the other clever stuff, we just give the day over to God. And so the blog is really about that, but it's a kind of gift for anybody that might want to use that for themselves individually, or if they've got running a similar kind of community project, food bank, warm space, whatever. It just gives them a way of starting that sort of prayer time with the people that they're working with.
Yeah, I think that's lovely. So do go over there and check some of this out. I think you will really enjoy that. I certainly will do myself. I'd like to talk about social action.
Yeah.
Now, churches, lots of churches get involved in social action.
Yeah.
What makes your experience different, and why is Community of Hope so vital?
I think a lot of churches, quite understandably, quite appropriately, want to respond to different needs in the community. And particularly over the recent years, there's been debt projects, there's been food banks, there's been warm spaces, all sorts of different things. And often what we're trying to think about what we're doing is we're trying to meet a particular need. We're trying to fix that need. But we kind of discovered in the process of, first of all, setting up a kind of community cafe and then the food bank that went with it, we discovered that what we were doing was more than that. And when we were gathering and inviting and encouraging people to come in and get help from us, partly because we placed prayer right at the center of it, so that even before we gave out food parcels, people could come in and join us for prayer. It created a different kind of environment. And what we started to discover is that people are actually coming not particularly for food, not particularly for debt advice. They might be coming for those things, but they actually keep on coming back, and they keep on coming back again. And actually it's because they feel as though they belong. So that's been a really big part of it. They feel as though they belong. And one of the reasons, again, that I think we discovered by accident that the people feel as though they belong is because we encourage them to join in. If somebody needs to clean the floor and if they want to offer to do it, then they can do it. So there's that sense of belonging, but very much alongside that, a really important part of the whole thing is this sense of we are a community of people that love Jesus,
Mhm.
and we want to include you in that community. We're not simply saying us Christians are going to save you. We're saying, come along and join in. Come and be
I love
part of
that.
it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And what happens is they become part of it. And one of the most amazing things that we've discovered, so often people that come along, we help them out a bit, we encourage them to join in, they help out a bit. And then at some point, they will begin to talk about their own faith and their own trust in Jesus when we haven't particularly preached to them. I'm not sure what we said, but it's like they've just kind of picked it up from us. It's like we've helped them uncover what was already there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everyone's got that. I always say that sort of eternal little flame that's within them,
and it's like we're just kind of
put a bit of fuel on.
Putting a bit of fuel on.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's the most amazing thing. And of course, when it happens with our guests or our volunteers and they start sharing it, then there's kind of no stopping it really. And that's the lovely thing that we've experienced. We've got this community where I would say it's got a life of its own, but it's not. It's got the life of Jesus, and Jesus is just alive and working through each one of us.
So why should churches get involved with social action projects?
I think churches, we all obviously should be seeking ways to both love God and love our neighbour. And churches, perhaps in the last century or so, we've tended to put a bit of a focus on the worship bit, the loving God bit, and we kind of think as the loving our neighbours is something we go and often do by ourselves or whatever. It's not been a kind of fundamental part of what we're doing, but God calls us to do both. But the other side to it really is, I used to work as an evangelist in my local church, and I led alpha courses, did all sorts of evangelistic events, and that was great. But I've got to say that the work I've done through Hope has been much more effective in terms of reaching people for Jesus. We're doing all this social action stuff, but it helps people to see what the community of Jesus looks like. It helps people to see that actually these people love one another. These people will go out of the way to help. And actually what they're doing is reflecting what Jesus would do. And so we're telling the story of Jesus by our actions. And so then when people want to talk to us about Jesus, it's a kind of really natural, easy conversation. We don't have, when I worked as an evangelist in the church, it can often feel a bit awkward. You're trying to, shoehorn in that conversation about Jesus. We don't need to do that. It's just really natural. People come along, they join in, and they'll ask us some quite unexpected questions because they can see that we believe in this Jesus and they're beginning to believe in him too.
So do you think that's perhaps because deep down we all are searching? We all have that, like I said, that sort of eternal kind of flame. We're knitted, but then what you've effectively done is given people a comfortable platform where they can naturally talk about it in a comfortable environment. Is there something like that?
I think that's absolutely right, because I do believe absolutely we are made in the image of God.
That's right.
So it should not be surprising.
I always think of the Shreddies advert where we're knitted.
Yeah. Yeah, we are knitted together by God. And so it shouldn't be surprising that we have something in us that is looking for God. Sometimes you just don't know it and we kind of have to unveil it a little bit. But then what happens, and because we try to create an environment that feels safe, where nobody's put her under any kind of pressure, people then feel able to unpack their problems to us or unpack their questions to us and ask us questions that we don't necessarily know the answers to.
But does that allow you to go on that journey together?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it does sometimes. People ask me a question, think, oh my goodness me, how am I going to answer that question? And so that's exactly what you do. I don't try and say, okay, this is the answer. We just have a conversation. We try and figure it out together, really. Because I think it's so important, actually, to listen to people, to try and listen to what is the heart behind that question. It's not for me to come out with some pat answer, but to try and really listen to where's their pain? Often the questions sometimes come from a place of pain. A guy who I've got to know really well, he's more than once, he's asked me about death. because it's clearly something that he's fearful about. He doesn't quite get it. He doesn't quite know what's coming next. And so we just talk about it. I kind of say, well, almost like these are the options. These are the
Yes.
possibilities.
Yes.
And this is what I believe. And we just talk about it together. And it's fascinating, really, because often those kind of conversations, he'll just kind of say, well, okay, pray for me then.
Okay.
Just go with it.
What advice would you give to churches who are looking to take, say, their social action projects into more of like a community of hope?
Pray. I mean, I was more to it than that, but keep prayer front and central to the whole thing, both in terms of personal preparation, in terms of what you're doing together as a team, but very much in particular, if you're offering something to the community, when that session, whether it's a food bank or a cafe, a warm space or whatever, drop in, what we have found such an amazing thing to do is we used to pray as a team and then open the doors. Now what we do is we open the doors and let anyone come in that wants to and join us in that prayer time. That has been a complete game changer.
I love that.
Because it's amazing. I mean, and what we find is some people will come in straight away. They love it. Some people for quite a long time will hang around outside and not want to come in. And actually, in many cases, bit by bit, they'll start to come and they'll lean against the door frame. They'll stand inside, and then eventually they'll come and sit down. And because actually we're not doing anything that scary, really, and they just sit and soak it up. But it's such an amazing thing, and it is the simplest of things. But quite apart from the fact that what we're doing is simply handing everything over to God and acknowledging that we need him in all of it, we're really communicating to everybody that's coming in, this is who we are. This is who we belong to. And it's yours as well. We're not excluding you. If you want to be part of it, you can be part of it. And what that means is that people then know what we're about. We're not hiding anything. We haven't got any kind of hidden agenda because they can see what we believe. And that means if they want to know more, if they want to find out more, if they want to talk about any of it, they can. And it's not a big deal. It's just who we are. But it has been something that I think has been the heart of what we do. And it provides the kind of lifeblood for everything, really.
I think that's lovely. I've got one last question for you. If there was one key takeaway because I'm talking a lot about sort of churches and what they can do and things like that, which is great. But let's talk about the individual.
Right.
Let's talk about me or whoever's listening to this. But if there was one takeaway that you'd want people to have from this book, what would you want that takeaway to be?
I would love anybody reading this book to see that we have an opportunity as a church right now across the nation, probably further afield than that. We have an opportunity to be church in a way that really genuinely reaches out to the whole of community around us. We're discovering something new in this season. Churches are already rising up to do all sorts of things in their communities. And there is a way of doing this that actually enables those efforts to become new communities of hope, new communities that demonstrate something of the kingdom of God. And I think it's an amazing opportunity we have in this season right now that I would love everybody to be a part of.
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful. I've loved listening to this, and I just want it to grow. I want people to learn from this book, and I just think there is. I keep coming back. I said it to you before. I just keep coming back to the second commandment. I just keep coming back to love your neighbor.
Yeah,
as yourself. I think there is so much to be given. I've just got this wonderful visual image of people just at the door coming in, listening to the prayer. They're being prayed over just by being there, and the conversations that you would have had. I think that's just wonderful. So I wish you the very best. Is there another book on the horizon?
I would like to think so. Well, one of the things I am doing I've already done a bit of work on, and it connects a little bit with the blog, but I have begun to put together more of a little booklet around helping communities of hope start each day with prayer. For some reason, we can be a bit inhibited about that. There's a bit of a historical thing of when we're working with people in need, we shouldn't be offering to pray. But I think we need to find a way and a confidence to be able to do that. So it's a little booklet that will just help people use very simple, very short ways of just praying with their community. And, I think it's something that might just help people make a real difference in their own setting.
Well, you've heard it here first. It's got to happen now, Nigel. You got no choice. It's said now. Nigel, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.